Hey guys, we are back with another episode of The Purple Show with me, Mackers, Ben, and Tom. How are you boys doing today?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, doing well, thanks, mate.
Awesome. All right, so I'm back from my trips in COS, back hosting the shows again, which is nice. It's a nice feeling, especially as there are some very exciting things coming up for the channel, which you guys need to make sure you keep an eye out for. With the Purple Show, there's going to be a bit of a new structure to it. It's going to be a bit more structured, kind of less of an informal chat and more of an in-depth discussion about specific things. So the bulk of it's going to be reacting to news and previous fixtures, followed by FPO, which is the first time we're doing this on the channel. And finally, our predictions for the week ahead. Firstly, though, I just want to talk about the fact that Wales have finally released their World Cup squad for the first time in 64 years. So fair play to them. No major surprises in most of the players they picked, but didn't write this down when I was doing my research because it only recently came out. The England squad. Just want to get your guys' opinions if there's anyone missing or anyone that shouldn't be there. Start with Tom.
Well, I think the obvious sort of exclusions that everyone's talking about at the moment are probably Tomori, Abraham, and James Ward-Prowse. I mean, the fact that Sancho's not really nobody's kicked up any fuss about Jadon Sancho not being included sort of shows how poor of a couple of seasons he's had at Man United. But yeah, for me, the main ones are Tomori, Abraham, and Ward-Prowse. They've definitely got a right to be in that conversation and potentially even on the plane when you look at Calvin Phillips has played, half an hour for Man City, and that was the last game against Chelsea all season. And regardless of anybody's ability, if you haven't played all season, I don't know how you can make a World Cup squad. Maguire's another one. I think Tomori should be in for Maguire. That's kind of a no-brainer. And I think the others are okay. It's a toss-up between Wilson and Abraham, but on form, yeah, you'd probably give it to Wilson, wouldn't you?
Yeah. How about you, Ben?
Yeah, similar. I mean, I think it would be better. I mean, it would have been better if his excuse for Abraham hadn't been that he'd dipped in form at the wrong time. Because it does, like, you look at the squad and it's not based on form. So by saying that and using that as an excuse just negates the whole thing because he's quite clearly not done that for other players. So, just be straight and say, I trust this player more. And like this player's done it for me before, because that's quite clearly but how he's chosen a lot of these players, i.e., why Maguire's in there. So
yeah, there's no way Maguire's in there for four.
Yeah, and Calvin Phillips, but I mean, obviously, I like Calvin Phillips, but he's been injured, he's not played. So, but yeah, it's just one of those things, isn't it?
It is. All right. Well, we'll move on to the Premier League fixtures over the weekend. On Saturday, probably the most there was two very entertaining games. One featured Tom's team, but I'd say the first one was Leeds 4, Bournemouth 3. Obviously, Bournemouth went 3-1 up, and then Leeds managed to claw it back for 4-3. That's kind of the second time they've done it. Got a late winner, obviously Liverpool before for Leeds, and then against Bournemouth. Are you surprised by their performance this season, Ben?
No. No, it's just it's kind of it's yeah. I mean, it's kind of what you expect from that type of team where they'll be up and down. It's just kind of it's not the status quo, but it is like usually you find that. Well, it's the Premier League, isn't it? Like, I mean, obviously other leagues as well. It's Premier League. You win, you can win against one team, lose against another, and they'll beat them, and then they'll beat you, and that's just the nature of it. Which obviously is why people like the Premier League. Not to say that doesn't happen in other leagues, but it happens more so in the Premier League than any other league. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'll keep you talking, Ben. Obviously, City beat Fulham 2-1. I'll ask Tom first, and then we'll get your thoughts on the game, Ben. Should that have been a penalty on De Bruyne? I don't know if you've seen it.
I did, yeah. I watched it on Match of the Day. I was out that day, unfortunately, so I couldn't watch any of the games. But I'd only say it is a penalty on De Bruyne because of the Forest game, and I know you're going to circle back to the Forest game at some point, but I just think there's so many parallels between that City game and the Forest game in terms of the refereeing decisions, and in particular the way that VAR views these decisions. So often VAR are just unwilling to turn over the small things, and we saw that a lot in the Forest game with penalties not being given for challenges that absolutely should have been penalties, or at least penalties that if you're going to give it in the Man City game with De Bruyne, for instance, then you have to give it in the Forest game. So yes, I'd argue that it was a penalty on De Bruyne, and to be honest, Man City versus Fulham, it's a game that Man City should be walking anyway. If it wasn't for the Cancelo red card, which was this may be a bit controversial, but I thought that was quite harsh actually. I mean, he's shoulder checked him, and maybe it's controversial, but I don't think that's a red card. It would potentially even a foul. And if we're being maybe a little lenient with the refereeing at the beginning of the game, I don't think that's a foul. And I think City would deserve to win the game. So for me, yeah, it was probably the fair outcome in the end.
Ben, so what was your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, the Cancelo red card, I think, he's last man, so that's why they're giving it red card. But it's a shoulder challenge, isn't it? So back in the day, that's no chance that's a red card. But in this day and age, with him being last man as well, that's a straight red now. But yeah, it's just one of those things. And then the penalty, it's one of those penalties where if it gets given against you, that's no chance as a pen, no chance. If it's for you, that's stonewall penalty. It's one of them ones. It's swings and roundabouts. You get some in the season, you don't get some in the season. But yeah, I mean, obviously with the Forest game as well, from that point of view, yeah, as a Forest fan, obviously you would argue it was a pen because then you get those pens. But yeah, it was soft. But I'll take it. Obviously, a City fan, and obviously Haaland stuck it away. Not sort of convincingly, but he stuck it away nonetheless. And he said that after the game, it's one of his most nervous moments of his life. Last minute pen, win the game. Obviously, it's only Fulham and it's just a random Premier League game. But in terms of the title race, it's really important. And I don't know if he's ever had to do that before, where he's had to take a pen in the last minute. So it might be like his first experience of that, one of his first experiences. And then obviously being at For City and being the man, the main man, there's that added pressure there as well, isn't it? So. But yeah, it was good. I mean, I was at my mates at the time, and it came up that we got a pen. I was like, yeah, we're missing this. That's kind of the default. I mean, pessimistic City fan, yeah, but pessimistic City fan and a penalty, knowing City's record with penalties under Guardiola recently, you're just that's just the default to say you're going to miss it because if Haaland wasn't on the pitch, you probably would have. So it is a major problem. If Haaland's not on the pitch, we don't have a penalty taker. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll move on from the City game onto the Forest game, which obviously we have touched on slightly. Forest 2, Brentford 2. I think before the game, if you got that result, you'd be happy. But obviously, after the game, there's been a few penalty shouts. Obviously, we've spoken about the De Bruyne one, and I can see why you're saying the De Bruyne one's a penalty, because if anything, the Forest ones were more of a penalty and therefore should have been a penalty. But because the way VAR works, because it was an on-field decision in the Man City game, it wasn't clear and obvious to overturn it. But with the Forest game, they weren't on-field penalties, so the VAR did not deem them clear and obvious. Do you agree with how VAR has been used in this situation, and kind of what are your thoughts on the Forest game altogether?
Well, I think you're spot on there in the sense that if it's the referee's decision and it's made on field and it's overturned, then they obviously go to the monitor, and 9 times out of 10, it's then the decision is changed. But I think that with VAR this season and last season as well, and for however long it's been implemented now across European football, I just think they've missed a couple of opportunities to sort of, especially for a fan that attends the games, they don't know what's going on with VAR. And I think one of the great ways they could sort of include the fans in the VAR decision-making process is just use rugby's model, for instance. I mean, rugby shows it on the TV. They can hear the communication between the ref and the TMO. If they included that in football, the fans would be way more included. They would have a clear idea of what's going on and why the decision has been made. There'd be far less controversy. If, for me as a Forest fan, I could see those 3 penalty shouts and hear exactly why they've not been given, rather than sort of a muddled mess of aftermath and Sky Sports trying to like explain why it's the correct decision when clearly it's not, and they've got no basis for the decisions. If they were able to explain it in real time, the referee who's on the pitch, then it would be far clearer to understand, and there'd be far less controversy surrounding it. The only reason we're talking about this is because it's been 3 poor back-to-back decisions. If those decisions were explained, they can be challenged at the time by the VAR, or it's explained why it's the correct decision. I just think there's so many better ways of doing it than they are now.
That's fair enough. I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head there, and I completely agree with that. On to Sunday. We'll speak about the 12 o'clock kickoff. Obviously, Chelsea 0, Arsenal 1. To be honest, my team, Chelsea, didn't really put in a performance I could be happy with. Obviously, 1-0 to Arsenal, top of the league. Not necessarily the worst result it could have been, but all in all, Arsenal weren't at it, and we were really poor. So for Arsenal, it's a really good result. Not necessarily their best game against the top side. Well, class as the top side still. And they got a result. That's a very much a worrying sign probably for the rest of the league in Man City, that Arsenal gone to Stamford Bridge, not necessarily played their best game. Yes, against the Chelsea side that weren't playing well either, but still got a result. In terms of, for a Chelsea standpoint, we were extremely poor. We had no real attacking outlet. When we had chances, it just didn't seem to know what to do. Havertz had a few times where if we just squared it to Aubameyang, it's pretty much a certain goal. And he didn't. And we pretty much suffered for it. Lack of options in the midfield, from defence to midfield. I think also a serious amount of tiredness. I know Arsenal have probably played about the same amount of games and have changed teams less, but I don't know what it is. We're not quite gelling. I think Potter's actually probably looking forward to the World Cup. Yes, a lot of our players are going, but we're also going to get a lot of players back through injury. And as much as this World Cup is not a good thing, shouldn't be where it is. Chilwell's now out, obviously due to an injury that he would recover from if it was a normal season before the World Cup. But yeah, I'm not very happy about the Arsenal game, but we'll talk about the City game later. I was actually a bit happier, even though we lost 2-0, from the City loss to the Arsenal loss. But we'll get to that later.
Well, anyway, Mackers, while we're on it, actually, I was going to just ask, because obviously you're the Chelsea fan here. 2 losses in a row now, and you've not had a great start to the season, really. You've lost a manager, Potter's come in. What do you see as what's success for you this season?
Europa League.
What, winning it or finishing it?
I think
getting in the Europa League,
getting
Champions,
my
getting far in the FA Cup and the Champions
pessimism
League.
is rubbing off on him. My pessimism is rubbing off on him.
No, this is genuine. This is genuine.
The money you spent, the talent you have, and top 6 is.
Tom is like, if I'm the pessimist one, Tom's the optimist. Like, Tom is usually like easy top 4.
No, I think there's a lot of teams. I think there's a lot of teams going for top 4.
Win Champions League,
having had managers implement their systems for much longer. Yes, we've spent a lot of money, but I think Potter still needs at least the World Cup break to really work a few players. Then kind of build towards getting. If we get 5th, I think considering where we were when Tuchel was sacked and where we've kind of had 2 games a week, we, to be fair, smashed our Champions League group after a really shaky start under Tuchel. If we do well in the Champions League, maybe get quarters or semis, then that's fantastic. I think that would be a great result. If we get 5th, and then if we go far in the FA Cup, maybe even try and win it for the 4th time in a row, making the final in the FA Cup. I'm not going to speak about that because that sucks.
I remember that one last season. Yeah.
No, that was 3 seasons in a row, mate. But anyway,
you're not wrong.
Making 5th, far in the FA Cup, if not winning it, and far in the Champions League.
I still think you got a chance, but there is a lot of teams going for.
Well, there's a team that we're going to speak about, not Villa in the Villa United game, but a team after that. Villa 3, United 1. Obviously, there was the typical manager bounce, one heck of a manager bounce, to be fair to Villa, considering their form this season. I do think that I don't want to take away from the Villa win, but watching United and then obviously doing my research on them this week, they were tactically very poor against obviously a Villa with a lot of vigour. I don't want to take anything away from their performance because they clearly came with they brought back in, who's that young English midfielder who Ramsey. Yeah, he played fantastically. But for example, the United attack and midfield would press, and then their back four would just stay where they were, and then just left so many pockets. Does make you wonder why this is happening. But with United this season, they will go up, they will go down. Their season's very up and down in terms of performances. So I don't know what you guys think of that. We'll start with Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I know some of my United fan mates. Obviously, it was lovely to see him lose, but yeah, some of my United fan mates were saying like he didn't really rotate for the Europa League, and he didn't. Obviously, that means that you're playing the same players for the Sunday game. So the players were fatigued a bit tired because he wants to play a certain way, but he's not rotating because I mean with the squad that United have got, they've got quite a large squad, but it shows that he doesn't trust that squad outside of the starting 11 and even the bench. So it's a little bit of that as I think. Obviously, he doesn't quite trust the other players, and then obviously that leads to. I mean, I'm not saying like the only reason they lost was because they didn't rotate, but that's what my United fan friends were saying. But yeah, they weren't great either as well. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. On to the Newcastle game next. Probably the team that, in my opinion, I think have probably outshone anyone in terms of expectations. Maybe only Arsenal this season. Newcastle are looking threatening. I mean, they've got the best defence in the league, and it's 63 million, by the way. Chelsea signed a player for about that price. He's been injured for a while now. Fofana, I'm talking about. But I mean, yeah, it's very impressive. Obviously, not unfortunately for Southampton, because I think a lot of Southampton fans are happy about this. Hasenhüttl was sacked, but I do want to ask, how good has Almiron been in your opinion so far this season, Tom?
Well, Almiron was the one I was going to mention anyway, primarily when we're talking about Newcastle. One of my so in my fantasy football mini league at work. One of my rivals in there told me 7 or 8 weeks ago when Saint Maximin got injured, he said, I'm going to bring in Miguel Almiron as just a little differential pick. I laughed at him because, I mean, if you look at Almiron's record over the last 2 seasons, he's been atrocious. Like, I mean, obviously the famous one everyone talks about is Jack Grealish saying that Mahrez has played like Almiron. Because if you look over the last 2 seasons, that's a fair thing to say about somebody playing badly. But so obviously I laughed, and then Almiron's gone on to be the best player in the league, bar probably Kevin De Bruyne and Haaland for the last, since he brought him in. So yeah, you can't really understate how good he's been, and the entire of the Newcastle team. what's it, 63 million they spent on their defense.
Yeah.
And it's probably the best defense in the league, maybe on par with Arsenal at the moment. I mean, statistically, they are the best, but like when you even look at them individually, they're all quality, absolute quality, really. And I mean, you can look at players like Dan Burn and Fabian Schär that you could argue were relegation candidates a couple of seasons ago, but the way Eddie Howe's transformed this side is just spectacular. I mean, Forest played them on the first day of the season, and let's not like beat around the bush. Forest were terrible, as we have been for most of the season. But Newcastle just had such a level of quality above. I think Ben might touch on it, but Bruno Guimaraes, oh my goodness, to watch him pass football around is special. And yeah, this entire Newcastle team is a real force to be contender with this season.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just briefly run through the English, the League Cup. Bournemouth smashed Everton, even which I think Lampard wasn't particularly pleased about. Arsenal, very, very happy for me, considering the last few games haven't been brilliant. But Arsenal lost 1-3 to Brighton. Well, big result from Brighton, obviously going 1-0 down and then bringing it back. Newcastle obviously had a very tough game against Palace, but 0-0 at full time, but beat them 3-2 on penalties. Tom, you pretty happy with the Forest result, 2-0 versus Spurs?
Oh, mate, I watched that game and it was special. Like we were actually incredible. Ben, I remember you saying a couple of weeks ago that you haven't really watched Forest too much this season. We were different gravy, mate. We were spectacular. Jesse Lingard had the game of his life. And one player that I'd completely written off for Forest, Sam Surridge, who was spectacular last season, scored a hat-trick against Swansea at home. I remember going to that game and just and predicting him for the England squad or something mental like that. But Sam Surridge and Jesse Lingard were the two standouts yesterday. The entire team came good. I mean, even though Oral Mangala got sent off, I remember texting Nick, who's been on the show before, and just saying to him, like, Oral Mangala is actually world class. Like, he was probably the best player on the pitch, despite not scoring and getting sent off. Like, that guy is genuine quality. And yeah, as a Forest fan, that's the best we've played all season. And that signals we're going to lose 5-0 to Palace at the weekend. There's not really much hope still, but it was nice to just enjoy a quality performance against a first 11 Spurs side.
Fair enough. I know. Yeah, I was going to say it was a very, very strong Spurs side. Next up, probably the most shocking one is West Ham 2-2 with Blackburn at full time, but lost 10-9 on penalties. Ogbonna hitting the crossbar. And Brereton Diaz, obviously, if anyone's been watching the show for a while, we spoke about him a bit ago with Tom. He scored the equaliser to make it 2-2. Next up was Liverpool versus Derby. Sounds like Derby did put in a heck of a performance. Not necessarily, even though Liverpool may not have played their best.
I was going to say, Mackers, it was the Liverpool under 23s. Let's not give Derby too much credit.
But apparently, Derby did do very, very well. But Keller, again, in kind of domestic competitions, pulling out the bag for Liverpool. Liverpool won 3-2 on penalties. Next up is me and Ben's team. City won 2-0 against Chelsea. I was actually at the Southampton versus Sheffield Wednesday game at St Mary's, which was fun. Also went down to penalties, but unfortunately for my entertainment, I was actually behind the goal, 3 rows back behind the goal for the penalties, which was pretty cool. And that was a good experience. But obviously, I wasn't watching the Chelsea game. Having looked back on it, a lot better from us. We still lost, but we had chances. Lewis Hall, young kind of left wing back midfielder, looked very, very good. Probably should have scored against you, Ben, but he didn't. So that's all right. But I think obviously we lost, but I even said before the game, I don't think we're going to win this. I put a 1-0 prediction just because if we were going to win it, it'd be a scrappy game. No one's really getting any chances, and then we take one up late. But obviously, Mahrez scored and Alvarez scored from a Mahrez shot.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm sure you're happy, Ben, with that result.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know Potter said that he found a few more positives in that performance as well, and you did have chances. Obviously, like you say, Hall should have scored against us, but Yeah, Ortega had a storming game. He's a decent, half decent backup keeper. Ortega Moreno. So yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, he did have a phenomenal game. Your keeper, a lot of very good saves. He got man of the match, didn't he? So
Yeah.
obviously it indicates a certain picture on the game. Unfortunately, this week we do not have enough time to do FPL. That is my bad. I am moving to London when this. Well, I will have moved to London by the time this podcast comes out. That is obviously an indication for some very exciting things to come for the channel. But we will do our predictions for the coming weekend. We're going to do City versus Brentford first. We'll start off with Ben. What's your prediction for this game? This will also be on the Twitter, by the way, our Twitter at the Blue Podcast 1, where we do our predictions league. If you want to get involved, just comment on the post your prediction and we'll add you to the group chat. But yeah, Ben, what is your prediction?
We'll go 2-0 City.
2-0 City. Tom?
He's not very optimistic, is he? I mean, Brentford no Ivan Toney and struggling for form. I'm going 5-0 City here.
That's a big result. All right, I'm going for a 3-1 City. I think City will still dominate them, but I think they'll still nab a goal, Brentford. I do think they'll nab a goal. All right, next up, a pretty big game in terms of actually a top 4 race, which is interesting to say. Newcastle versus Chelsea. I think, as I said with the City one, the only way we're going to win is if we win 1-0. So I'm going Newcastle 0, Chelsea 1. How about you, Ben?
Give me like 2-2, I think.
2.
It's gonna be yeah. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a high scoring draw.
Fair enough. Tom?
For me, this has got 0-0 written all over it. Solid Newcastle defence and Chelsea struggling for form. I'd say 0-0 yet.
Fair enough. Liverpool versus Southampton. Obviously, they may have their new manager, Southampton, by then, but I don't think he'll be able to implement very much. Tom, what's your prediction for Liverpool versus Southampton?
9-0. Nathan Jones hasn't come in yet. You can't start playing Brexit ball with Southampton just yet, and Liverpool have just hit a patch of form. I'm going 9-0.
9-0. All right. I'm going for a 3-1 as well. I'm going for another 3-1. I think Southampton are going to play better in the first half. Then I think Liverpool's class is just going to outshine their effort that they're going to put in. Ben, what's your prediction?
I was going to go 2-0 again.
2-0. All right. Forest versus Palace. I'll let Tom go first for this one.
3-0 Forest.
Just going all in.
Jesse Lingard getting the first one, griddying down the Trent end again, and then we'll go Tyler one to continue his form. Morgan Gibbs White will get 1-2. Yeah, 3-0 Forest, I'm saying.
All right, I'm going to go for a 1-0.
That's what I was going to say.
All right, well, 1-0 it is.
Adventurous today, aren't you, Ben? Oh, my days. Being adventurous.
I'm only saying that as a prediction. I could very easily see this being a very high-scoring game, especially with Palace's attack. Kind of your attack and maybe your defense as well, not being as good as some other Premier League sides. And no offense to Forest there, but that I think it's going to be 1-0. But I could very easily see it being like a 3-3, 3-2, 4-3 kind of thing. All right, last prediction for the weekend is Wolves versus Arsenal. Wolves kind of have found a patch of form. So I'm going to go Wolves 2, Arsenal 3. Ben, what do you think?
2-0 Arsenal.
All right. And Tom?
1-0 Arsenal. They've scored in every game this season. I can't see that ending here.
Fair enough. Well, those are our predictions. As I said, you can always check them out. We'll post them about an hour before kickoff so you guys can see the teams. Obviously, we don't, but we don't mind because we're predicting every single game. Currently, Tom is winning. So if you on 3 points, you get 1 point for a correct exact prediction. I'm behind on 2. I think Ben's also on 2. So, yeah, it's very easy for someone to be able to knock him off his pedestal at the top. and I'm looking forward to seeing some more faces, hopefully, in the Predictions League. So yeah, check us out at the Blue Podcast 1 on Twitter. Instagram is also at the Blue Podcast 1. TikTok is at the Blue Podcast. Check out our other shows. The Blue Podcast is coming soon, and that's what you should be excited for. Kind of something new going there. And the Gradient Show. That's going to be, hopefully, we're going to be doing the Black Panther pretty soon. He's just flexing the merch.
I think it has to be.
Yeah, and obviously, kind of have teased it's going to be a bit of a new era for the channel, and I hope you guys are looking forward to it. All right, cheers, guys.